For my separation project, I decided to separate Old Del Paso thick and chunky salsa. Out of 17 ingredients, I decided to separate 5 of them using 4 different methods of separation: hand separation, filtration, evaporation, and distillation. The first method that I used was hand separation. To do this, I used a strainer and a glass bowl to strain out the big pieces of onions, green peppers, and tomatoes that were inside of the salsa. After this, I put the strainer with the vegetables aside and I poured the tomato paste into a sieve with a coffee filter on top. This process of filtration separates the water and tomato juice, which is the filtrate, from the tomato paste, which is the residue. I left the tomato paste to filter for about 2 hours. Next, I take the residue off of the filter paper and spread it on a sheet of parchment paper. I then put the tomato paste into the oven, which is at 200 degrees Celsius. This process of evaporation will take all of the water out of the paste and leave only the solid paste behind. While this method of evaporation is taking place, I started on building my distillation machine. I used a clear plastic tube, a water bottle, a kettle, and a lot of duct tape to build my first machine. I also used a cone that I made out of a Coke can and tinfoil to allow the vapor to make it into my tube. I wrapped the tube around the cold water bottle and taped it to help it stay together. I then suspended the water bottle on an angle using rope and a coat hanger to allow the water to fall into the glass and collect the distilled water. First, I tested my distiller with water. The vapor made it to the bottle, but did not distill. I needed a way to make the vapor cooler and allow it to condense. So I redesigned my distiller. For my second design, I wrapped the tube around the coat hanger and secured it using twist ties. I then got a casserole dish and filled it with ice and cold water. Once I submerged the tube, I refilled the kettle and tried again. This time, with colder temperatures, the distiller worked and I got water inside the glass once I tilted the tube to allow the water to flow. It was time to use my distiller to separate the water from my salsa. I poured the filtrate into my kettle and allowed it to boil. It worked a second time and I was able to separate pure water from my mixture. If I was able and had the proper equipment, I would find a way to force all of the vapor through my distiller as some of it fell out of the side of the kettle. I would also suspend the tube in a way that the water could flow out easily without me having to tilt it. After the water has been separated, I take out the dried tomato paste out of the oven. All of the water has now been evaporated, leaving behind the solid tomato paste. This dry paste is easily removed from the parchment and put into a container. I then take the separated vegetables and remove the remaining tomato paste on them using water as a solvent. I then separated the vegetables using hand separation and placed them into separate containers. After this process, I had completed my project. I now had salsa separate into 5 of its ingredients: tomato paste, water, green peppers, tomatoes, and onions.